Hello, I'm Dave from PC Gamer. I'm the head of this little band of outlaws. And today we're going to be talking about the new Valve Steam Deck, which is this little beast here.
This
is the first time you've seen it, isn't it?
This is the first time I've seen it now.
So we've had the Steam Deck for the last couple of weeks. I've been testing it, mostly around battery life, because that's kind of an interesting topic. And I'm here with Kitty Wickens.
Jacob Ridley.
Alan Dexter.
And we don't let Katie talk.
I'm decorative.
So, Steam Deck. All right, this is my first time holding it, so it's clearly massive, though. I think that's the key thing. I know that's been all the talk for like a good 3 weeks on the Steam Deck, because there's not really been much talk about it since, but it is absolutely massive, isn't it? So, although interestingly,
the screen's about the same.
My initial impression is it's lighter than I expected.
Yeah.
That was my feeling as well. The first time I got it out of the packet was the fact that it felt smaller and lighter than I was expecting. Yeah. I wasn't expecting it to be quite as thin, but also I feel like the balance.
So yeah, first impression definitely light. Second impression I just had the fan whir up, but it's quiet enough.
It's only on OlliOlli World.
Yeah, it's only on a menu, so maybe that's not pushing it too far. But yeah, no, I mean definitely lighter. It feels it feels very Valve-y in the way that it's constructed hardware-wise. It's like the Index and the Steam controller. There's a sort of weird edge to it. They have a way of making hardware that kind of feels not cheap. It feels premium, but also kind of the way it's constructed and stuff, and the design kind of feels cheaper than.
Yeah, I think for me it's somewhere in between the Steam controller and the Index. The Index was a really interesting device because they went all out for like the best VR hardware they could possibly make. With the Steam Deck, they've gone for a slightly different tack. They've gone for like an affordable unit with good hardware in, but just like really tightly focusing on price points. So like you've got I think it's $399 for the 64GB version. It's like $500 for the mid-tier 256GB version. This is the top tier version. This is the 512GB version, which is about $650, I think, $650. And that comes with the etched glass and the 512GB SSD.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this the etched glass model as well then?
Yeah, which means it's slightly less glary out in sunlight or in like direct overhead lamp.
Have you used it in sunlight at all?
Not in sort of like direct sunlight.
We haven't been
It's
outside.
winter.
Yeah,
It's winter.
What's outside?
That immediately, the tactile response on that is really nice. Although it's weird that this one's the only one being engaged. There are two different trackpads for my thumbs that I can use, but one of them's kind of like got a little feedback to it.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the other one also has feedback. It's just in this game it's not being used.
Yeah, they can both be adapted as the standard sort of like Steam controller trackpads, which is kind of interesting. It took me a little while to get. I full disclosure, hated the Steam controller. Absolutely hated the Steam controller.
I was going to say, when will that come out?
I'm gonna have to temper that a bit, because everything that Steam controller has brought to Steam, all the different configurations for games, that all the people that were just like totally into the Steam controller, now I appreciate you, because all of the configurations for the Steam controller now make games run really well on the Steam Deck, because they make use of the same control scheme.
So it's a good thing that Valve put the Steam controller out so many years ago, and loads of people did get them because they were really cheap, and now it's coming back into play because of this.
They're playing the long game.
Yeah, very long game. Do you think Valve actually knew that was the long game they were playing when they did the Steam controller?
They always think it.
Yeah, okay. All right, sure. Got it.
So yeah, so we should go around and say like who actually, like, because we did a little discussion piece around when it first came out. So who was into it? Who actually put reservations down? And like, where were we going? Where were you standing when it first came out?
I mean, I had a few reservations. I figured the touchscreen wasn't going to be that great. I haven't actually tried it yet. I'm going to poke some things.
It's the same with the Switch one though. It's like the touchscreen's kind of that like secondary input, isn't it? Like you almost don't. I mean, for this though, if it's running its own OS, maybe you'd want to use the touchscreen a bit more to be like intuitive on the OS.
Yeah, there's going to be times when you want to use the touchscreen, but generally, use the controller.
I also figured it was going to be a lot heavier than this. Like, I feel like I could probably sit in bed and just do that and not feel like I'm going to like drop it. Fits in my hand perfectly. Yeah, I just wasn't expecting it to be this like ergonomic.
I think that's the thing. As a device, I really love it. I think as a physical thing, I'm really sold on it. I know it's big, and maybe slipping it into a bag isn't going to be as easy as it is with a Switch, but Yeah.
I'm gonna try and fit it in my pocket then.
Tried that. Not great.
So were you you didn't reserve one?
No.
Do you wish you had reserved one now since you've actually had a go on it?
No. I think no. I just don't think I would spend that amount of money on a handheld anything, to be honest. Like, if I was going to get something, I'd get a laptop. But
I think that's the big issue, isn't it? It's like who is the Steam Deck for? Where were you standing?
So I was really on the fence. I can't remember exactly why I was on the fence at the time, because it feels like a decade ago. But essentially, I was kind of like, I'll see how this one plays out, because it's a new whole thing. I used Project UFO, the Dell Alienware one, and it was really loud and really heavy. So I kind of had used like a Steam Deck-like thing, and I didn't really like it that much. It was an interesting concept, but the fact that it never really went beyond that wasn't surprising to me at all, because like the battery life was even terrible on that and everything like that. So I was a bit on the fence, but I did reserve one because it was like £4, and then you got it back if you didn't use it. So I was like, well, there's no downside in doing it, though the system did break for me, so mine is like reserved for like essentially next year at this point. So am I going to be sad that I don't get one immediately? I don't think so, but I think it again comes to the gaming laptop thing. That kind of fulfills.
How do you want to play your games? That's kind of the key.
So this is the other thing. You mentioned the embed. This is light enough, and that's true. And it's got a bit more grip on the back, which I appreciate, because on a Switch, you know, it's flat on the rear of it, and so when you're in bed, I get a real bad like hand cramp down the bottom of my hand. So I have like a case.
Nothing to support.
But even then, I can't game like that for long in bed, even with a Switch. And the Switch is
light.
It's definitely lighter, and even though it's a bit more ergonomic, I'm still not entirely sold on the form factor in terms of me just actually using it day to day. But you know, if it came up, my ticket came up, would I buy one? Maybe.
Which one did you reserve?
The highest end, just because the space factor for me, like games take up so much space, and I just it's not a small amount of money more, but I can't imagine the 64GB one, because that just seems to me like, I don't know, that's a real indie machine, and for me, the indie machine's the Switch. Like,
but saying that, the SD card slot will take like big chunky SD cards at a pretty similar speed to the actual SSD in there, because it's an M.2 drive, it's an NVMe drive. It doesn't feel the fastest when you're loading games, so I don't know how much you're really going to miss out on if you're just plugging games into the SD card slot.
But the 64GB one obviously is not the NVMe, and there's only kind of room. Yeah, so I do wonder how that will fare in terms of speed. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. What do you reckon, Alan?
I didn't book one. I can't remember what was happening when. I think, was it a holiday or something when it came out, when it first announced? I missed the initial thing, and then I figured it was too late to actually book.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like if you ordered one today, it would be, you're looking at sort of like the end of the year, maybe, like potentially.
And that's assuming that there is stock and that they have chips and all that works, which is probably not the case. I wish I had. I would quite like one now.
That's interesting. I was
having used it.
I was really not into it. Like when it was first announced, the Steam Deck was just not my cup of tea. I was just like, I'd got a Switch, and after the pandemic and lockdown and having kids, never traveling. It's like I was just like, the Switch was my traveling device, and I'd sit on planes and use it, and that was fine. I couldn't see myself doing that with a Steam Deck, so I was like, didn't reserve it, didn't do it. But then, having played with it, I'm really into it. I use it around my house, and there are other use cases that I'm really looking forward to using with this. Which is why, yeah.
That's the thing that's excited me most, actually. Dave using it to work on, which I did because I've the One X player.
This is the other thing, yeah. I mean, this isn't like the Steam Deck isn't the first handheld gaming PC that's been around. Like, so this is the One X player. Another kind of Steam Deck alike, but essentially they've been making these for a long while as well. Similar form factor, similar internals. So this isn't a new ecosystem. But what Valve's done, as we were saying before, is about creating something that's actually affordable. This is like what? This $1,500?
I mean, that's the mini, so that's That's the newest one, and I think it's 14.
Which is that's
You're
a
saying
game
3 times the price.
That's a gaming laptop, and it's 3 times the price.
Yeah.
This is like max $600.
And that's what we were saying is like the power of the Steam Deck as well is mostly its price. Like,
Yes.
which is also a reason, like, so you can get one if you were to look at one in the second-hand market as soon as the Steam Deck comes out, and if they're going on eBay, you know, for 3 times the price as well, if not more, that there's no reason to buy that. I know even if you really want a Steam Deck, you could buy a brand new other device, or even if you wanted a Steam Deck, I just don't think the value is going to be there.
The only problem is with the Steam Deck's better. That's $1,400, but it's got Intel Xe graphics, which about half as good as. But the APU in there is amazing.
But that's the other thing with the APU in here and the time that it'll take. So if you were to book one, you know, pre-order one now, and then you get your ticket comes up maybe the end of this year, maybe the start of next year. By that point, AMD might have a whole nother generation of even better chips. We've already seen the Ryzen 6000 ones, which have got like, you know, similar config, if not better config GPU than this. You'll get ones like that, potentially even better on a different process node, more efficient. The gaming laptops of the early next year are going to be far beyond, well, maybe not far beyond, but they're going to be beyond the capabilities of this. Do you really want to be paying like the same amount for this because your pre-orders tickets come up a year from now? And some people are going to have to make that decision as to whether like, all right, this is cool now, this is cool in February 2022. Is it going to be worth my money in February 2023 when my ticket potentially comes up? But I suppose maybe they'll get a chance before that.
I mean, this is weird, isn't it? The PC's never had this. It's never had something where here's a snapshot in time, this is the hardware, this is what it's capable of. So that's quite a different take. I think this is going to just be a snapshot, and people potentially going to make games just for the Steam Deck, in theory. They probably won't, but there is an idea there. A new APU is probably not going to do anything to
So it's sort of like a console ecosystem then, where it's going to last longer than the tech really would if it was just in the PC, because it's, you know, it's specifically demanding more developers are putting time into it. But do you think the Steam Deck's going to get that time from developers to, you know, put more into it?
I think if anyone can do it, Valve potentially has got the nous to actually make that happen.
It's whether it works is the ecosystem that Gabe's been talking about he wants to create. Because Valve are going to be working with other companies to create these types of units. So they're like, we don't know who they're going to be working with. They're not, which is the problem. And it's like, it's potentially, if someone else comes out with another $600 version, then it could be a really interesting thing. I think the thing that stands out to me is the versatility. Like you were in the office with me when we were like, I had just had this as my office PC, like plugging it into a dock, plug it into a mouse and keyboard and a monitor. You use the desktop mode, which is like a version of Linux, again, like the Steam OS with a standard sort of like basic KDE Plasma desktop.
I was amazed that you could actually read anything on the screen, to be honest, but
it kind of works. But then outputting onto a 1080p monitor as well, and it worked really nicely. Mm-hmm. The benefit of also that is that you can play Fortnite on the Steam Deck, because if you just plug in GeForce Now, then you can just stream Fortnite through that, even with the free subscription. So it's like, yeah, it does work. And yeah, I was playing like Cyberpunk 2077 fully ray traced on the 3080 version of GeForce Now through the Steam Deck, and it worked really, really nicely.
Power of game.
That's the power of game streaming, and that's why the 64GB version could actually be a kind of a viable option, which is kind of an interesting thing, because like you could do in-home streaming. So in your house, you can stream off your own gaming PC if you've got one, or you can stream off GeForce Now. Currently, you have to dock to stream off GeForce Now because you have to do it through Chrome, and Chrome doesn't understand the Steam controller. Right. But apparently that update is coming, so you will be able to roam free streaming from GeForce Now.
That's like the big thing with this so far then, even in your experience now, and I think it'd be good to chat more about your specific experience, because we're just chatting about it so much. It's just like, oh, we've used it once, but you've actually been using it for a while. But the other thing is Valve have constantly updated it even while you've had this, and they're expected to do even more updates until like, I think there's another big one that we're maybe expecting like June and stuff like that. So there's potentially quite kind of big improvements to this that are even beyond, you know, what it's able to offer today.
So yeah, if you want to talk about what it's able to offer today, I think the big thing that I've been kind of focusing on is battery life testing. Obviously, as a usable device, it's really, really nice, but as a mobile gaming device, battery life is so key. So I think Valve have spoken about a sort of like 2 to 8 hour battery life playing games. Which
What game can do 8 hours?
I've not found a single game that can play 8 hours. I've managed to get 7. I've managed to hit 7 hours on FTL, which is a super lightweight game. Brilliant.
It's 2D.
You can get FTL on a Switch as well, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's something to try out and see what the battery life on that is.
And that's the thing.
Like a visual novel or something like that. You could probably get.
The screen's not refreshing. It's fine. But yeah, for things like, and then like OlliOlli World, I think I managed to get like 5 or 6 hours out of again, which is again is a pretty lightweight game.
Nice
but those sort of games will play.
What about 3D game though?
The worst offender that I've tried is Forza Horizon 5, which actually runs impressively well considering.
Amazing. Yeah.
We're talking about like a little device, integrated graphics, like eight compute units from AMD's RDNA 2, and it's playing like Forza Horizon on sort of like medium settings and looking good.
It does look good.
Does it drop to like 7 FPS within like 20 minutes of it shutting down though?
Well, that's the good thing. Like what Valve have done with this custom APU is they've specifically said to AMD when they've been designing it that they want sustained performance out of it. So they don't want it to throttle. So the Steam Deck doesn't throttle. So no matter how low your battery life is, the Steam Deck is still going to be running at full whack if you let it. But there are things that you can do to mitigate that and sort of like claim back a little bit of battery life. So out of the box, it will run locked at 60 frames per second because it just automatically enables VSync. No matter what the in-game setting is. But there is advanced performance settings that you can go into and you can just stick on a 30 FPS lock. So it ties everything to 30 FPS, which is kind of what they recommend in terms of getting a decent battery life out of it. So like certain things will then last for a bit longer, depending on the game. I was playing Horizon Zero Dawn last night, testing that at 60 FPS lock. And I think I was getting about 97 minutes as a total battery life from a full charge. So at 60, and that was at original settings. So it wasn't even at high settings. So that was like at the original sort of like PS4. Was that? I don't know. The original PS4
good length
setting.
of time. That's like a movie.
An hour and a half. So it's not too bad. Lock it to 30, and you're getting 120 minutes. Okay. So 2 hours. So it hasn't gone up a huge amount, but it does get you a decent amount of time. But that's because it's quite a demanding game, and the frame rate wasn't ever hitting 60 frames per second anyway. But and then for sort of like for games like Witcher, then you're sort of like you're getting almost up to the 3 hour mark, which is again pretty good, like on medium settings. So like there are ways to get to claw back that battery life and actually get a decent length of time out of it.
So you think it's enough that you could actually take this out and say you're like going on a train somewhere, you're going to go sit on a boat. You could take this out, you could play it and reasonably expect to actually enjoy a gaming experience, like, start to finish while you're traveling without constantly panicking about battery.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it quick to charge as well?
It does get to sort of like, it's got a fast charge if you've got like, I think it's like the 100 watt charger on there. Quick charge will get to 80% in sort of like, I think it's like 20 minutes or something. I can't remember the full thing, but it does get to a decent level pretty quickly. And with like a little battery pack, like you can fill it up pretty well. I've got a USB USB Type-C charging battery pack, which will just go into the back of that. It's 10,000 milliamp hours. I think the battery in there is like 5,500 milliamp hours in there. So it's like it will get you sort of like a charge in a bit in there. But it'll also charge while you're playing as well, which is a pretty impressive thing. So you can be charging and playing at the same time from a battery pack, which isn't a bad thing. And I've had issues with the Switch, like sitting on a plane, plug that in, and it won't charge as well. So it's not like you can have a Switch running like all the time.
No. You can drip feed them a little bit sometimes by like plugging them into something else, even if it's like a low voltage like output. You can get a little bit back into them. I wonder if you could do the same with this, but it does sound like it's going pretty good.
That's the thing. It's like it's actually a proper usable device, and I find it like because of the versatility. I think that's what's key to me.
And the one thing I'm definitely noticing from just flicking through, I'm just going through the game library, and it's obvious, it's a Valve device, it's a Steam, it's a Steam Deck. But suddenly I'm like, oh, your whole account is just on here. There's like years and years of collecting games that maybe you'll never play, you know, you're not like a Switch. You don't have to buy the games again or anything like that. That's a really big, like, if you had the decision between these two and you'd never had a Switch and you have a PC and you know want something on the go, this is cheaper in terms of software, in terms of the games you're going to get. And you know, there are a lot of games that maybe your Steam backlog you're actually going to play because you're sat on a train or you're on a plane and you're like, what the hell do I want to play? Right? Okay, I'm going to flick through. Oh, I got this game, kind of like a low effort game that came out like 10 years ago. Maybe I'll actually play it for once on this, because that's what I use the Switch for a lot of the time. But you have to buy them again.
Getting through your guilty backlog.
Yeah, getting through your guilty backlog.
Is there certain games that work better on the Steam Deck that just because I can't use controllers, so I'm terrible when it comes to anything FPS. I will just never play.
I think that's the thing. It's like FPS just wouldn't touch that. We were talking about this earlier about the UI, weren't we? Mm. And like having issues with Horizon Zero Dawn, it felt quite cramped because the UI was quite tight around it. We were also talking about RimWorld as well, and you were asking about the mods. Mm-hmm. Like there are certain games that I think might work. I think you're going to have a play around with games that you shouldn't play on the Steam Deck and just see how well they go.
Yeah, because I mostly don't play like RPGs anymore. I don't know why, but like city builders and stuff, just trying to imagine them on a Steam Deck is hard. So we'll see how that goes. You can also like city skylines and stuff. You can like change the size of the UI, but is it going to then? I mean, I can't see any of the map or.
Yeah, I think UI scaling is going to be a really big thing for when they optimize the games for the deck, because otherwise you're going to end up with, you know, like the Witcher problem where you kind of can't see a bunch of stuff when it's on a really small screen.
I just don't know if I'm going to be bothered to mess around with a game to get it working either. I think that's the big thing. It's that I just want a game to work on a Steam Deck. On a PC, yeah, I'll spend ages getting it all right. On a Steam Deck, I just want to play a game, jump in, play. If I've got to mess around, I'll probably jump straight out again and go for something else.
Part of my concern, but I think one of the things that they do with their deck verified games list is like the green tick of that is basically it runs great out of the box. You don't have to touch anything. Leave 30 FPS lock on, and you'll have a good experience. But then even with like a yellow tick on there, they're playing GTA 5, which now works on it, and just like racing around on that and just like having a blast. There's stuff, and like Jacob's now playing Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, so I wanted to test out the fan, and now I'm just playing Horizon.
You can hear it from over here.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that to the mic where you're actually going to hear that, but it's not, you know, super whisper quiet, but it is pretty quiet as far as small fans go.
It's not bad. I did some sort of like kind of hacky decibel testing. I was getting around sort of like 56 on Horizon Zero Dawn. I think it was like about 56 decibels. Sort of testing around here, which is like a sort of like a quiet conversation, quiet office. I think is a sort of like the scale for that. But I don't find the decibel level to be the issue. I find it's that pitch.
Yeah, 100% the pitch.
It's like those little chipset fans on like an AMD motherboard where they whir up and they get to like 8,000 RPM, and they're just the pitch is so high.
It reminds me of the
really
Viva TNT 2, maybe that kind of level. That's what it's
going for nostalgia hit there.
Right. Okay. Nice. That's a very specific. Yeah,
but I think that's my real issue with that. It's like people keep talking about, oh, I play this in bed, and for me it fails the significant other test.
Yeah.
Where
gonna wake them up.
Exactly. Like I can't.
Bit.
I can play Football Manager on a little laptop, and
it's fine. Football Manager already?
Yeah. Oh, I've got Football Manager running on this, and it's fine. It actually works really nicely. Yeah,
you could run
absolutely.
that on like a computer from a library from 1993.
Hey, it's quite demanding.
Okay.
But I can play it on my little laptop, and it won't touch the batteries, and it won't touch the fan. So it will stay passive and it'll stay really quiet, and that's not an issue. This will keep wearing up. This wears up on the menu screens of the Steam UI, and it has that pitch, and it's noticeable, and it like you can probably get away with it if you're sat on a sofa and the TV's going. You could probably, that'd be all right. It'll still filter through, but it's not going to be in a quiet room. If that's the only noise, you wouldn't notice it.
Your noise test is if you're on a train, is it too loud?
Yeah, mine's always more of like a public shame kind of test, which is like if you have a laptop and a gaming laptop and you're playing it in a public space, is everyone going to look at you and be like, what are you doing? This is like a terrible thing.
They're going to look at you and go,
but I think with this, it's not, maybe not. I think if you sat next to someone on a plane and you have that kind of like it's not going to be a faux pas to get this out and be playing it while they're trying to see. Nobody's going to hear it on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
even on a train, I don't think I think you can get away with it.
I think you would get away with it. So I think it passes that for me.
It passes the embarrassment test, but not the significant other test. Yeah. So it's like it's there.
That is running really well.
It runs nice. There were a few drops early on where I think it was kind of, pulling stuff in from the world, and maybe it was, I don't know, the VRAM might have been a bit limited on it or something. But it's running nicely now. I think that is the surprise that you can. I think when Valve first sort of like spoke about it, they were saying it's like you can play any game. We haven't found a game that the APU cannot manage, and that's like honestly been my experience as well. It's like I've loaded up like a load of really sort of like intensive games, and you play around with the settings, and you can get a good experience out of it.
I think the one that surprised me was Deathloop, which is a fairly new game. Very pretty. It ran really well. It felt reasonable as well. It's like, okay, you could play. Yeah,
absolutely, and that plays really nicely as well. Like you get some weird FPS drops in that we've been seeing sort of like further on into the game, but
Does Cyberpunk work?
I haven't actually played Cyberpunk on that. I've played it. I've only done it through GeForce Now, so I haven't tried.
You saved on the torture test just in case something goes
the
wrong.
actual torture test.
Yeah.
After the patch, it'll be fine, mate. I'm just saying.
But I think generally though, my impression coming from this and just held it, I am impressed with it. I am impressed with the package, as it looks and as it is. I think it's nicer than I expected it to be in a way because of the price, and I think that was, it seemed so too cheap really for what it was going to be compared to what we'd already seen.
Yes.
But Valve, they're obviously working in massive quantities and they're selling a lot of these, and they've made it work. And it's very impressive that they made it work both on the hardware and on the software side. They're really optimizing it as well. I guess that's your experience from it.
I think the other interesting thing, I've not actually taken a screwdriver to it yet, but you can take it apart with a single Phillips screwdriver, and I think that's the PC experience.
That's something you don't get with Nintendo.
No, exactly. It's like you're never going to take that apart.
And Valve are obviously selling replacement parts for it, so they're really keeping it's a PC thing, alive, which is nice.
It's a really modular experience. The motherboard itself doesn't have a lot of the actual extraneous components on it. Everything else sort of like plugs into it. So iFixit, I think, are going to be doing all the replacement parts for it. They've done a tear down of it. Everything's really nicely labelled inside with like a spudger and a screwdriver. You can get everything out. I think the interesting thing is the control sticks come out really easily,
right?
Which I think is going to be a really important thing.
I'm just waiting for the case mods for this to come out immediately, like this, see-through plastic ones, like the old Game Boy Advance style and all that sort of thing. That's going to be immediately. There'll be a Switch one, undoubtedly, as well.
I'm intrigued to know if you can get the 64, the really cheap one, and put an SSD in there.
Well, you will be able to, because it's the same hardware. It's the same design. They wouldn't have spent the money to create a whole new design just for the cheaper version. So it'll have an M.2 slot in there.
I mean, it's quite a small one, isn't it?
Yeah, they just released a 1 terabyte small M.2, right? So you could even get the cheaper version then. If that was the case, you could get the cheaper version, get that brand new 1 terabyte M.2, and maybe it would work. Should do, yeah.
The other thing I'd want to do as well is obviously put Windows on there. Because Linux has got a place. Is it really on the Steam Deck?
Yeah, periodically I'll stick Windows on my gaming PC just to see if I can deal with it. And I haven't
on your gaming PC.
I've not managed to get Linux on my gaming PC. Yeah, sorry, not Windows. Yeah. But periodically and even SteamOS. I've never got on with SteamOS at all. But this, like having this in desktop mode, I've used it as my office PC, and it's fine. Like lots of the shortcuts and stuff like match Windows nicely. I'm really looking forward to getting SteamOS 3 and just dropping it onto a computer.
Yeah.
Just to, like taking it away from the Steam Deck and just like using it as a gaming PC and seeing what it does with high-end hardware.
Because the other thing with that is they're going to make this open at some point and say everyone can have it. Could you make a tiny little Steam box thing, which is essentially like a Steam machine, but like a tiny little one, load SteamOS onto it, have all this stuff on it, and just have it connected to your TV or whatever.
100%. That's the thing. It's like they've said Linux. Basically, like we're speaking to developers, and they're saying like we know that as soon as the Steam Deck's out, someone's going to take SteamOS off there and make it publicly available. They know that's going to happen. They will be launching a properly publicly released version of SteamOS 3.0 like soon after the Steam Deck launches, and like the one that you rip off this isn't going to be quite right to drop onto everything. But I'm really excited to see what SteamOS actually looks like now. It's kind of more mature, and like Steambox is can be a thing now, and that's kind of an interesting standpoint.
Steam machines weren't good though, Dave.
Well, Steam machines were fine. It's just that they never made SteamOS in time for the Steam machines to actually launch. So all the Steam machines actually launched with Windows, which was kind of like the antithesis of what they were trying to do.
And were far too expensive.
Yeah.
So.
But that's the other thing. We haven't actually managed to get Windows on here because AMD still hasn't released the Windows drivers for the Aerith? I don't know how it's pronounced actually. I've only sort of like, is it Aerith? There's the APU in this. They haven't released the drivers for it, so you can't get Wi-Fi and you can't get a proper display output on it. So still haven't managed to get Windows on there yet.
So still some stuff to come, but generally works. And on launch day, do you think should be a pretty painless experience?
I think come launch day, you'll get your Steam Deck out of the box, have to spend a while updating it.
Because you've had a lot of updates.
I've had a lot of updates in the couple of weeks that I've had this.
Are they big?
But they've got better. No, they're not. They're not big, and they take minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
And I think people have a great out-of-the-box experience, and they'll install their games on there, and they'll be surprised at how well they run. I'm impressed with the device. I think the longer term issue is going to be, if I had one, how much would I really use it? At the moment, I'm using it quite a lot because I'm testing it and it's a novelty and it's an enjoyable experience. But I've got a really good gaming desktop. Am I going to still be sat on my sofa using that?
Because this is the thing. I remember when the Steam machine, I had like your old Steam machine at the end of my desk for a really long time, and it was just like a long lost object that had just been put there, and it's like, oh, somebody from like 10 years from now would be like, what was this? Like nobody knows. Do you think this will end up like that one day, where it's just sat there and you'll be like, oh, this was cool once? Or do you think this will still be around? It'll set up a whole ecosystem. It'll still be like an actual new platform.
I think it's purely going to depend. I don't think the Steam Deck is like a proof of concept of the ecosystem. I think the real test is going to be whether anybody releases a Steam Deck-like device that is in any way affordable. Anything that's sub $1,000, anything over that, it's a waste of time because you get a laptop.
If someone like Asus or OlliOlli, any of the big manufacturers were to produce a better Steam Deck, what would you want them to do that this doesn't do?
I want it to be quieter, and I want a bigger battery life. And I think that is kind of the only things. Like for this size of screen, it's like 1280 by 800, so it's not super high res. I'm happy with the performance that I'm getting out of games on there. Like I don't feel like I desperately need more. So yeah, it's like it's kind of it's battery life and the sound. I think is the key for me.
Maybe if we wrap up with the big question to you, would you buy this, or maybe even a high-end version of this, or a gaming laptop? Or do you think you're going to fall on that?
I honestly don't know. Gaming laptops have got so good now. It's tough because it's like, I think there's going to be sort of like, there's the two camps, I guess, in a way. There's like, use this on the bus into work to play games on, and then get into the office and plug it in, or do you sit on the bus taking emails on your way into the office? That's kind of how I look at it. But I've also, I keep coming back to the price on it because I think that's such a key thing. And it's so hard to buy into PC gaming at the moment. Prices of graphics cards are insane. Prices of full desktops. Gaming laptops are like $1,200, $1,500 at best. You can get sub $1,000 gaming laptops and they're okay. They're not great, but this is like $500, $600. You've got a really good budget gaming PC that you can use out on the move. You can get home, plug it in, and you can use your entire Steam library. I think that's the real selling point for me. This is great budget gaming PC hardware, and that's something that we just haven't had.
So it's come at the right time.
It has. It absolutely has. The big question for me is whether Valve can make enough.
So yeah, availability is going to be a problem. If you were interested right now, you probably can't get one. So that impulse buy is kind of meaningless. So the pricing's right, but only if you can buy them. If you can't buy them.
Okay, so let's do the final round then. Like, would you buy one?
Maybe the smaller one. Well, the one with less.
Cheaper one.
Yeah.
I think it's £350.
Yeah. Are you going to see if it works with City Skylines first?
Hell yeah, I'm going to do that.
I'd be sorely tempted. I'd probably go for the 256 gigabyte version because I'd probably lean on the streaming more than I would the local gameplay. Are you gonna redeem your reservation?
So it's tough. I think I'd be tempted just because I'm probably a bit of a hoarder like yourself in just wanting to get kind of tech because it's interesting. But I think the Switch and my gaming PC fulfills my gaming needs. I don't think I need to like game on the bus or whatever to something. I just like put my headphones in and do that anyway. So
I'm just imagining you dual wielding them.
Yeah,
like.
exactly. Yeah, one pocket full of each. But I think probably not. I'd probably save my money. But it's not for a lack of it trying or being good. I think it's just for me. I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, I'd grab one. I don't know what I'd do with it, but I think it's an interesting tech.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Like you hate controllers, but I think this is actually sort of. I'm kind of the same. It's like I was initially really skeptical about it, but I love what it does. I love the device. I don't know how I'd use it, but there are so many different ways to use it, which I think really speaks to me.
I think the hardware is really good, and I think something will come of that. I don't know what, but.
But see, an AMD Ryzen 6000 laptop, with the similar. That's kind of where I'm at. That's what I want, really. That's like the thing.
I kind of want a laptop as well.
Yeah, maybe, and like you say, maybe they fulfill different niches as well. A laptop you can work on and you can game on when you sit down at a desktop, but you're not going to game on one on a bus. So maybe you're meant to have both, but in a silicon shortage, I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, that's our random ramblings about the Steam Deck and how we feel about it. Having had one, having played with one for the last couple of weeks. Check back on PCGamer.com for the full review and tech breakdown of it, which will be live pretty much now, I think. So, get looking. So thanks for joining me, guys. Yeah, good to talk to you again.
Yeah, good chat.
Love your work. Cheers. Take care. See you soon.